Welcome to Love Storyn Lounge, your cozy corner for the most heartfelt and immersive love stories, told just for you. Here, every story is designed to make you feel, to make your heart race, to bring the magic of romance straight to your ears. If you love experiencing love, the sweet, the painful, the unforgettable, then you've found the right place. Subscribe now and become part of our community of dreamers, romantics, and hopeless lovers. Hit that bell so you never miss a story and join us as we explore every facet of the heart, one audiobook at a time. Share these stories with someone you love, someone who needs to feel the warmth of connection, or simply with yourself during a quiet, late-night moment. Because love stories are meant to be heard, felt, and shared. Stay with us and let the journey of love unfold in your ears. The night I met her was one of those nights that feels like it belongs to no one. The city had already settled into its own quiet rhythm, a lull that made every step on the wet pavement echo softly, almost like it was waiting for something. I wandered without direction, feeling the weight of words unsaid and dreams postponed. The rain had started earlier, soft and persistent, and it tapped against the windows of the little cafe I stumbled upon, inviting me in. It wasn't a place I would normally go, but something about its amber glow seemed like a pause from the world outside, a small moment to breathe. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and old books, comforting and intimate. There weren't many people there, just a few scattered patrons nursing their own silences. And there she was, sitting by the window, a book in her hands that she wasn't really reading. She looked up only once when I entered, and even that glance wasn't curious. It was calm, almost indifferent, yet it held a depth that made it impossible to look away. I recognized it immediately, the kind of stillness only people who have lived and loved enough to know loss can carry. I don't usually speak to strangers, but that night, something pulled me closer than I expected. I asked her about the book. She blinked, startled, and then gave a small, gentle smile, the kind that lingers in memory. "I think I would have loved it a few years ago," she said softly, her voice carrying a faint sadness. That answer, so simple, struck me harder than I expected. It hinted at experiences, at quiet heartbreaks, and the wisdom that comes too late. We spoke slowly, carefully, like two people discovering a secret in the dark. At first about the rain, the city, the quiet streets, and then, almost imperceptibly, about things that mattered. We never rushed. Time stretched without us noticing. Outside, the rain softened into mist, blurring the streetlights and washing the world in soft gold. And in that gentle haze, I felt a strange certainty. This was someone I would not forget. When the cafe announced it was closing, neither of us moved. There was a hesitation, an unspoken reluctance to end the encounter. "I'm glad I met you," she said finally, her words delicate but sincere. I wanted to say something profound, something that would mark the night, but instead I simply replied, "Me too." And as she stepped into the mist, walking slowly away, I realized in a sudden, piercing clarity that meetings like this are rare. They don't always happen when they should. Sometimes they arrive too late, and the heart notices before the mind can catch up. That night, I didn't know if it was the beginning of anything permanent, but I felt the unmistakable weight of something important, something that would linger far longer than the night itself. After that night, we began finding reasons to meet again, small excuses that weren't really excuses at all. Sometimes it was a shared cup of coffee at the same cafe, sometimes a quiet walk along streets washed with rain, and sometimes it was simply sitting in the same room, letting silence stretch between us until it didn't feel empty anymore. Each encounter felt deliberate, though neither of us would have admitted it, and each one slowly unraveled the careful distance we had tried to maintain. She spoke about her life with an honesty that was rare, the kind that makes someone feel like they're standing on the edge of a private truth. She told me about the years she had invested in someone else, the slow erosion of hope, the quiet compromises she had made, and the strength it took to finally acknowledge her own needs. I told her about my own choices, about dreams I had delayed and opportunities one had let pass, about the weight of responsibility that never seemed to leave my shoulders. And yet, somehow, speaking of our separate lives felt less like lamenting and more like understanding the paths that had led us to this moment. We never spoke of what was growing between us. There was no declaration, no label, no promises whispered in the dark. But the unspoken thread was undeniable. It lingered in the pauses, in the way our hands hovered too close, in the way our laughter seemed to carry a meaning we couldn't voice. I began noticing the small details, the way her eyes lit up when she told a story, the delicate tremor in her voice when she was nervous, the way her presence filled the space without demanding it. There were nights when she stayed longer than she should, when the world outside seemed to shrink until it was only her and me. Sometimes our knees brushed under the table. Sometimes our shoulders met on the quiet streets, and neither of us moved away. And in those moments, I realized something both terrifying and beautiful. I was falling for her, slowly, irreversibly, even though I knew the timing was wrong. One evening, as we walked along a street lined with dimly glowing lamps, she asked me a question that seemed to weigh more than the night itself. "Do you think timing matters in love?" she asked, her eyes tracing the misted outline of the buildings. I looked at her and felt the truth of it in my chest before I spoke. "Yes," I said softly. "Timing is everything." She laughed, but it wasn't light. There was a shadow behind it. "Then we met at the wrong time," she said, almost as if she were testing me. I didn't argue. I couldn't. There was no answer that could change what we both already knew. And yet, even knowing it was wrong, I found myself wanting to stay, wanting to walk with her through the quiet streets, to hear her voice, to feel her hand brush against mine, even if only for a few more moments. Because there's a kind of love that doesn't wait for permission, that grows quietly and stubbornly, insisting on being felt even when the world says it shouldn't exist. By the time we parted that night, I felt an ache I hadn't expected. It was the ache of realizing that sometimes the heart arrives too late, and still, it cannot stop itself from caring. I watched her disappear into the mist, and I whispered to the empty night, knowing it wouldn't answer. We met too late, but maybe this was meant to be anyway. As the days passed, I began noticing her everywhere. In the soft glow of the streetlights, in the scent of rain on the pavement, in the quiet moments when I thought no one was watching. Loving her quietly had become both the easiest and the hardest thing I'd ever done. It was easy because her presence made everything else fade into the background. It was hard because every glance, every smile, every subtle brush of her hand reminded me of how fragile what we had really was. She felt the same tension. I could see it in the way she measured her words, in the way she sometimes laughed a little too softly, almost apologetically. The air between us began to thrum with all the feelings we refused to name. Every meeting carried the weight of what could never fully exist. Every pause held the question we didn't dare ask aloud. What would it mean if we gave in? I remember one night, walking her home after a long evening at the cafe. The streets were empty, wet, and silver under the moonlight. We walked side by side, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from each other, yet far enough to respect the boundaries we'd silently agreed to. She spoke about memories from her past, stories of people she had loved and lost, of decisions that had shaped her. I listened, captivated, feeling as if each word she spoke was a piece of her I was being entrusted with. "Do you ever regret timing?" she asked suddenly, her voice almost a whisper. "Meeting people when everything else in your life is wrong?" I stopped walking and turned to her, the mist curling around our feet. "I think timing doesn't care about regret," I said. "It's simply what it is. You can't control it. You can only live it." She looked at me, her eyes glimmering with a mix of understanding and pain. "Then we met too late," she said quietly, as though stating it made it true. "Yes," I whispered back, though the word felt like a knife and a salve all at once. There were nights when I wanted to reach for her hand, to erase the distance that separated us. But I couldn't. There were rules we had never spoken, walls built by past lives and broken promises, by responsibilities that would not bend to our desires. Restraint had become its own kind of intimacy, a way of loving without claiming. I realized, in those quiet moments, that sometimes love isn't about possession or action. Sometimes it's simply about feeling profoundly and letting the other person live in their freedom while carrying a piece of them with you. One night, as we sat on a bench watching the rain shimmer on the asphalt, she leaned her head slightly toward mine. Not enough to touch, just enough that I felt the warmth radiate, and I thought I might break if she leaned closer. She sighed softly. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I want to be near you, and yet I know I shouldn't. Every time I come close, I'm reminded that we can't have what we want." "I know," I said, my voice low, trembling slightly. "I feel the same. Every time I see you, every time I hear your laugh, I'm reminded that timing isn't on our side." We sat in silence then, letting the quiet wrap around us, letting the night stretch long and unbroken. In that silence, there was no shame, no fear, only the understanding that we were bound together by something rare and unspoken. It was love, yes, but love without a promise, love without a guarantee. A love that existed because it had to, not because it could survive. And in that moment, I understood something I had always suspected. Some people enter your life too late to change your story, but not too late to change your heart. And though we both knew that we could never fully cross the line, the quiet intensity of what existed between us was enough to make the world seem larger, and our own lives somehow smaller and lighter at the same time. There was one night that lingered in my memory long after it ended. One night when everything we'd been holding back pressed in on us like the weight of the sky. We met as usual, quiet streets around us, rain still clinging softly to the lampposts and pavement. But that evening felt different from the start. Charged, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Our conversations were lighter at first, small jokes and teasing remarks that danced between us like sparks. But beneath it all, a deeper current hummed, pulling us closer in ways neither of us dared to acknowledge. We ended up walking slowly, side by side, as the mist curled around our feet and the city seemed to hold its breath. My hand hovered near hers more than once, close enough to feel the warmth of her presence. And every time, I felt a shiver run through me. Her shoulder brushed mine. She didn't move away. Our closeness was unspoken, forbidden, yet somehow natural. The night held its own quiet law. It allowed intimacy without ownership, closeness without confession. There was a moment when I turned toward her, slowly, not sure she would step back or let me stay in that space we were both holding. Her eyes met mine, searching, questioning, yet safe. It was a gaze that could speak volumes without words. I wanted to reach out, to let my hand rest over hers, to close the distance and finally name the feeling that had been simmering between us for weeks. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something inside me insisted on restraint, on protecting her and protecting the fragile rhythm we had found. She exhaled, a tremor in her voice. "Thank you," she whispered, "for stopping." I didn't need to ask for clarification. I understood. There was a love here that could not be fully claimed, a connection that could only survive in quiet moments and careful boundaries. And yet, the ache of almost crossing that line remained, settling into my chest like a persistent shadow. We continued walking, silent now, each step a careful negotiation. I realized then that restraint could hurt as much as loss, perhaps even more. Because to love someone fully, to desire them deeply, and to choose not to act on it, that is a type of devotion few can endure without surrendering part of themselves. And we were surrendering, bit by bit, in silence, without permission. The rest of the night passed like a dream. We parted at her door, lingering in the doorway as though the air itself were afraid to move. I wanted to reach for her one last time, to brush my fingers against hers, to say all the words I hadn't spoken. But I didn't, and she didn't. Instead, we held the unspoken between us, a fragile thread that tethered us to each other without ever giving in. When I walked away, the night seemed impossibly still, almost reverent. Every step I took echoed with the memory of what might have been and what would never be. Loving her in silence had become its own kind of intimacy. Each careful pause, each withheld touch, each word left unsaid carried more weight than anything we could have spoken aloud. I lay awake that night, replaying every glance, every moment of closeness, every brush of warmth. I realized something painful and profound. Sometimes love is strongest, not when it is claimed, but when it is restrained. We loved each other fully, deeply, but the world had already drawn the boundaries. And we obeyed them, not out of fear, but out of respect, for ourselves, for each other, and for the impossible timing that had brought us together too late. It was one of those nights that stayed with me long after it ended, the kind of night that becomes a quiet memory you carry in your chest. A night that defined everything that came after. And though nothing had changed externally, something within me had shifted irrevocably. I knew then that loving her would never be simple. It would never be easy, but it would always be real, even if it existed only in the spaces we dared not cross. Time has a quiet way of teaching lessons you didn't ask for. After that night, the rhythm between us began to change. Our meetings became fewer, our conversations slower, as if the universe was gradually drawing the boundaries we had never named. It was subtle at first, an extra pause, a lingering glance, a step back taken without words. But over days and weeks, the spaces between us grew heavier, filled with what we could not claim and what we were too afraid to pursue. She came to me one evening, standing under the soft glow of a streetlight, her coat wrapped tightly around her. The mist hung in the air like a curtain, and I could see in her eyes the same ache I felt in my chest. She didn't speak immediately, just let the silence stretch, letting me feel the weight of it before anything was said. And then, softly, she told me she needed to try again, with her life, with the choices she had left behind before I ever came along. If I keep holding on to this, she said, her voice trembling, I'll never move forward. I nodded, though inside I felt a hollow ache. I had known this was coming, yet nothing could prepare me for the reality of it. Loving her had never been about claiming her for myself. Loving her had always been about knowing her fully, feeling her deeply, and letting her be free, even if it meant stepping back. I want you to be happy, I said, my voice quiet but firm. And I meant it, truly. Every word was a surrender of what I wanted most, a deliberate choice to honor the love that existed between us by not demanding it. We embraced that night, a long, lingering hug, full of everything we could not say aloud. It was a hug that spoke of longing, of gratitude, of sorrow, of understanding. It held the weight of every step we had taken together, every smile, every careful silence, every shared glance. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she whispered, "Thank you for finding me." "No," I said softly, my own throat tight with emotion. "Thank you for reminding me what love feels like." She walked away, and I watched her disappear into the mist, carrying with her a piece of my heart that I would never recover. And yet, paradoxically, I felt lighter somehow, because letting go had never meant forgetting. Loving her had been an education in patience, in quiet devotion, in the realization that some love stories are not meant to last, but are meant to exist fully while they do. In the weeks that followed, life continued its inexorable march. She was no longer there in the small ways I had grown accustomed to, the laughter that once floated beside me, the warmth that had become a constant companion. But the memory of her remained vivid. I found traces of her in the music I listened to, in the quiet corners of cafes I had once hoped to see her in the way the rain sounded on the streets late at night. And every time I recalled her smile, the soft way she tilted her head when listening, I was reminded that love does not always need possession to be real. I learned to carry her in my heart without needing her presence, to love without expectation, and to appreciate the depth of feeling that had come too late to be fully realized. That kind of love is both beautiful and cruel. Beautiful because it touches the soul, cruel because it asks you to release what you most desire. And still, every late night when the world grew quiet and my mind wandered, I would remember her, and I would smile through the ache, knowing that we had met, known, and loved in our own way. Some people enter your life not to change your path, but to change your heart. And she had done that profoundly, irrevocably, in the short span of time we had shared. I no longer wish things had been different. There is grace in knowing that even love that cannot last leaves a mark that endures, a light that does not fade. And so, I carried her with me always. Not as a presence to cling to, not as a memory to regret, but as a quiet, steady reminder that love, real, honest, tender love, is worth every moment, even when it comes too late. Time, as it always does, moved forward. The streets remained the same. The rain returned and left again, and life continued in its quiet, relentless rhythm. But nothing about me, or her, was quite the same. She had left, carrying her own path, her own decisions, her own future. And I had remained, carrying the echo of her presence, the memory of laughter, of whispered confessions, of touches that almost, but never quite, crossed the line. There were moments when I would hear her name, or a voice that sounded like hers. And for an instant, the world would tilt, and I would be back in that cafe, in the rain, walking beside her under soft lamplight. I would remember her eyes, searching, questioning, longing without expectation. I would remember the restraint, the near intimacy, the ache of wanting something we could never claim. And yet, I no longer felt bitterness or regret. I felt gratitude, because we had met, even if it was too late. Some nights, I would sit quietly, alone, and replay our story in my mind. The first encounter, our slow conversations that felt like home, the nights of laughter and tension, the moments of restraint that hurt more than anything, the final goodbyes. Each memory was sharp and tender, like a song that could be heard only in the deepest quiet. And in the quiet, I understood the truth. Love does not always arrive to stay. Sometimes it arrives to teach, to awaken, to illuminate the spaces inside us that we didn't even know were waiting. I thought of her often, and I loved her still, not in the way that demands presence or possession or a promise of forever, but in the way that is patient, enduring, and quietly alive. She had changed me, reshaped me, opened parts of my heart I had kept locked for years. And for that, I was grateful beyond words. There were nights when I imagined what it would have been like if we had met earlier, if circumstances had been kinder, if timing had bent itself around us. I imagined afternoons of laughter spilling over into evening walks, quiet conversations that turned into kisses under the rain, promises spoken and held, and years shared. But those were only fleeting visions, beautiful and impossible. They reminded me that sometimes love is perfect not because it lasts, but because it exists at all, even if only for a moment. I often return to the memory of her smile, the soft tilt of her head, the way her eyes held a world of unsaid words. I remember her voice, the way it lingered in my chest long after she had left, echoing truths I carry still. And sometimes, late at night, I whisper into the quiet air, we met too late. But we met when we needed to. That thought, fragile and luminous, brings both sorrow and peace. Because while we could not have the forever we might have wished for, we had the experience, the depth, the rawness of a love that was real and unapologetic in its timing. I learned to carry her gently in my memory, to cherish the lessons and the beauty of what had been. And though our paths diverged, her presence lingered, a quiet warmth in the places I least expected it. Some people leave footprints on your heart, permanent and unseen, and hers had done exactly that. Loving her became a quiet practice, a soft echo that shaped the way I would approach the world, relationships, and the love I would give in the future. It was a reminder that love, even fleeting, is never wasted. That even a brief encounter, a single connection, can leave you richer, fuller, more alive. We met too late to hold each other, too late to walk the same path side by side. But we met exactly the right time to understand what love truly means. Honesty, patience, respect, and a devotion that doesn't need possession to exist. And so, I carry her in the quiet hours, in the subtle ache of memory, in the moments when the world is still enough for reflection. I remember her, I love her, and I am better for it. Because some loves are not meant to last, but they are meant to teach us how to love, truly, deeply, completely, without expectation, without regret, and without needing to change the timing of the world. And maybe that is the most profound love of all. And that was the story of We Met Too Late, a tale of love, timing, and the quiet beauty of connection, even when life doesn't give us forever. Love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about learning, feeling, and carrying someone in your heart even when they're no longer by your side. How did this story make you feel? Did it remind you of someone you once loved, or someone you're still holding in your heart tonight? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your favorite part of the story in the comments, or tell us about a moment when love arrived late but left a mark that stays forever. Your story might inspire someone else, just like this one inspired you. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Love Storyn Lounge and hit the bell so you never miss a new love story. Share it with someone special tonight, your partner, your best friend, or anyone who needs to feel the warmth of a heartfelt story. Remember, love is all around us in every whispered word, every small touch, and every moment that takes your breath away. Keep your heart open and let these stories remind you why love is always worth feeling, even if it comes too late. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story, where hearts meet, emotions run deep, and love continues to find a way.